Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 417, Sitting Psyduck. The episode begins, not with Ash and the gang, but with a Psyduck wearing a red ribbon around its neck, running very frantically through some tall grass. And it turned to look back at who it was running from, being three creepy Pokemon that were shadowed by the grass, so they couldn't be seen. We didn't know what they looked like or anything. We just knew that they were chasing after the poor Psyduck. And they also had red eyes, which signified that they were angry as fuck for some reason at the Psyduck. We'll get to that later though, because for now, let's check in on Ash and the gang, shall we? They were currently taking a small break by a lake just below a cliff on their way to Saffron City, with Ash giving Pikachu his hat to try on for a little bit, for fun. And Pikachu was also shocking Phanpy for fun, who Ash had sent out, while May was gathering some water inside Ash and the gang's canteen that they shared to store for later. Suddenly, while Brock had started to prepare a campfire to make their break as awesome as possible, Ash suddenly heard something screaming and looked up to see Psyduck jumping from the tall grass that it was in earlier to the ground off the cliff, landing hard on its ass, right on Brock's fire that he had just started, causing smoke to rise and Psyduck to rise as well, because it freaked out due to the pain it was experiencing from the ass burns. Psyduck knew that its back was burnt as well, so it screamed in pain even more, leading Brock to suggest that May take the water she had just gathered and pour it on the fire to put it out, so that Psyduck could land back on the fire and not get burned anymore. But Psyduck had a different idea, as it just decided to jump into the lake, with May jumping out of the way in the process, so Psyduck didn't knock her over. Ash and the gang go over to the part of the water that Psyduck had landed in, and they go to check on it, with Max being excited to see Psyduck in person. Although Ash saw that it didn't look very happy, even before it got fucking burned on its ass, and wondered why it was running so fast to begin with. Just then though, Ash and the gang realized why it was running so fast when they saw that there was three Pokemon chasing it that leaped down from the cliff, and finally coming out of the shadows of the tall grass, revealing themselves as a Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, respectively. As soon as Psyduck saw these three Pokemon, it got frightened as fuck and tried to swim away as best it could, as Machop, Machoke, and Machamp all rushed into the water to go after it. Ash and the gang hated to see Psyduck in distress, and May said that they should do something to help it, and the rest of the gang agreed, so they went to go help Psyduck, as they saw that it was now cornered against a wall that was made of rock at the end of the lake. But as Psyduck stared at the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp in fear, Ash and the gang arrived at the end of this lake on the shore, along with Phanpy and Pikachu, all of them coming to Psyduck's aid, as they yelled at the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, telling them to back off of Psyduck, although the Machoke ignores Ash and the gang's pleas and grabs Psyduck by its ribbon, making Psyduck squirm in fear. May was still adamant, along with the rest of the gang, that they should do something to help Psyduck, so the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp were startled when Phanpy went to attack, as ordered by Ash, going for a tackle attack, but before Phanpy could do so, Machop was able to recover from its nervousness and simply just hit Phanpy away with a karate chop, kicking up dust in the process, shocking Ash and the gang by how powerful the Machop's karate chop was. But regardless, Ash simply told his Phanpy to use a rollout, which pretty effectively deals with the Machop, sending it flying into the air. This leads Machamp to try and get revenge on Phanpy and stop its rollout by using a karate chop of its own, but Phanpy continued to use rollout, also using defense curl as well, to make Machamp's hand just bounce off of it, and then the rollout made contact, tripping Machamp, much to Ash and the gang's joy. They were very impressed by Phanpy's abilities. Brock even commended Ash, saying he did well in battle by telling his Phanpy to use rollout immediately after defense curl, because apparently, according to Brock, using a rollout right after defense curl would double the damage from rollout. The Machoke was angry as fuck now, since its friends Machamp and Machop were knocked down, so it tossed Psyduck aside, throwing him to the ground to deal with Phanpy instead. And Machop and Machamp both recover from their injuries, and they join Machoke in surrounding Phanpy, all determined to attack it, making Ash and the gang worried for its safety, as Machop, Machoke, and Machamp all jump to attack Phanpy, ambushing it. But Pikachu saved the cornered Phanpy by using a Thunderbolt to electrocute Machoke, Machop, and Machamp, sending them all running away in fear themselves. They got to know how Psyduck felt being all scared, fucking pussies. Anyways, as Ash and the gang watched the dust that formed from the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp running off so quick, Phanpy was the first one to approach Psyduck to make sure it was okay, and everyone else followed it. And they tried to comfort the Psyduck by informing it that the three Pokemon that were bullying it earlier wouldn't be bothering it anymore. Although Psyduck simply just stared at them with a confused expression, as did any Psyduck. Ash assumed that maybe Psyduck didn't believe them, and it thought that Machop, Machoke, and Machamp would come back. So Ash offered to let Psyduck stay with the gang until they reached a place far away from Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, a safer place. Although Psyduck still just had a confused expression on its face. Although Psyduck was confused, it did know that Phanpy had helped save it, and it and Phanpy became fast friends, because Phanpy could just become friends with anyone, and they started to play together by the lake, which Psyduck had now come out of. Well, Phanpy and Psyduck were playing, which involved Psyduck tossing Phanpy into the air, and the two Pokemon hugging each other. Brock had pulled out some Pokemon food and offered it to Psyduck, which made it immediately stop playing, intrigued by the food, only becoming more intrigued when Brock explained that the food was made especially for water types, because it was his water type food. Hearing this, Psyduck started to chow down on it, really enjoying the food immediately. May then pulled out her Pokédex to learn more about Psyduck, and upon seeing the picture of Psyduck on the Pokédex, May noted how this Psyduck had a red ribbon, when plenty of other Psyduck did not. As May pondered if this red scarf was like a genetic mutation or some shit, and if they should try and surgically remove it to make Psyduck normal, Brock came to the conclusion that this ribbon must have just been put on by a trainer, so Psyduck must have had a trainer, and Ash agreed with this assumption. Ash then suggested that since May was the closest one to Psyduck right now, May should try and talk to it and ask it where its trainer was. May did so, but Psyduck didn't seem to want to talk about its trainer, apparently. Nonetheless, though, Ash and the gang became determined to get it back to its trainer, because they knew the feeling of having their Pokemon lost. Meanwhile, we then see none other than the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp again, and we see where they had run to. They had run to a carriage that was driven by a Rapidash, and they were kneeling before it. Specifically, they were bowing to a young girl that was inside of the carriage, their trainer. The girl was waving a fan in front of her face as she tried to cool herself down, and tried to cool her anger down after Machop, Machoke, and Machamp had explained that they had failed at bringing Psyduck to her. And she simply just ordered the three Pokemon to try their best to catch Psyduck for her again, as despite her being very rich, she was very sad at the fact that Psyduck was gone. Not wanting to see their trainer upset, Machop, Machoke, and Machamp immediately went back on the search for Psyduck. And once Machop, Machoke, and Machamp were gone, the girl was still trying to grasp how her fighting Pokemon had failed to grab something as small as Psyduck, and declared to herself that she had to get her sweet little Psyduck back. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, Phanpy, Pikachu, and Psyduck, they were all walking down a trail, away from the stream, towards somewhere safer, away from the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp. Along the way, Phanpy playfully tackled Psyduck and Pikachu, and Psyduck and Pikachu playfully tackled back. Team Rocket happened to be spying on Phanpy and Pikachu playing, as well as Ash and the gang, from high atop a tree, using binoculars, and disguising themselves as pine cones. Jessie, however, was not very happy, basically saying that she was of the opinion that the three of them had kind of reached a new low. They haven't really done anything interesting or successful lately. They were just trying to steal Ash's Pikachu or other Pokemon time and time again, and they just kept fucking failing. And she just wanted to do something fulfilling, or something that would actually get her a promotion from Giovanni for once. Luckily, Jessie had Meowth by her side, who was busy looking at the Psyduck, and then pointed to it, suggesting that they could capture the Psyduck, since it would be pretty easy to do so, and if they started with an easy capture, then, they could work their way up from there. And Meowth basically thought it would be an easy capture, because Psyducks were usually dumb as fuck. Meowth then assured Jessie that Psyduck would definitely get them promotions, because Giovanni would fucking love Psyduck. Although, James wondered why the fuck Giovanni would want a Psyduck, leading Meowth to go into another one of his boss fantasies, which we see. And Meowth basically explains that Giovanni would love Psyduck, because Psyduck could assist him if he ended up getting hurt. And the fantasy went like this. Giovanni was trying to make a doghouse or some shit when he accidentally hit his hand with a hammer instead of a nail he was hammering in. However, as Giovanni grasped his thumb in pure pain that was now red, and he also started to cry, Psyduck could apparently grant Giovanni healing powers because of its look. Basically, Meowth thought that all Psyducks could use psychic powers no matter what, and Meowth apparently thought that this Psyduck could use these psychic powers to heal Giovanni in some way, which would in turn make Giovanni extremely happy. Then, Meowth imagines Giovanni pacing in his room, debating about some shit, when he stubs his toe and screams out in pain, but Psyduck makes Giovanni happy by taking away the pain again. For Meowth's last scenario, he imagines Giovanni getting a brain freeze while eating ice cream on a hot vacation day on a beach, but Psyduck heals him once again. And Meowth also declared that Giovanni would be so impressed with Psyduck's powers that he would endlessly praise Jessie, James, and Meowth and promote them, which made Jessie and James extremely excited. They didn't really care about what Giovanni could actually use it for, they just cared about actually getting promotions. So with that, Team Rocket and Wobbuffet did their usual cheer, determined to capture Psyduck. Meanwhile, back with Ash and the gang, they were continuing to walk along a forest trail, while Pikachu, Phanpy, and Psyduck were still playing. Along the way, May made another mention of Psyduck's trainer and how they had to go find it, although Psyduck simply turned its head, showing no concern for finding his trainer at all. Just then, Team Rocket put their plan into action, disguised as salespeople in red jackets and glasses, also surrounded by flags or some shit. When Team Rocket called out to Ash and the gang saw Team Rocket's weird-ass disguise, not knowing that they were Team Rocket obviously, and came over to see why Team Rocket was calling them. As soon as they approached them, Team Rocket began advertising their supposed new business venture, because, they were salespeople, which was a sledding course, but on grass, not snow. Ash and the gang were obviously confused as to how the fuck they were supposed to go sledding on grass. But when Ash thought about it further, he thought that it would be a pretty unique and cool experience, though May, on the other hand, wasn't so sure about this, informing Jessie and James about the potential dangers of sledding on grass. But Jessie wanted to prove that the grass sledding was safe, so she said that it was safe, and to prove it, she would have her friend demonstrate for them. James wanted to refuse, because he knew that grass sledding was actually pretty dangerous, but Jessie forcibly pushed James onto a pink sled that she had suddenly pulled out from a bag of hers that was beside her, and she pushed his sled down a grassy hill. While James screamed out of pure fear, and his eyes even started to water once the sled really picked up speed, Jessie simply teased James, addressing him as his codename, Jamal, asking if he was having fun. James, wanting to try and trick Ash and the gang into believing that it was safe and fun, said that he was, but it was pretty obvious that he was lying because of how terrified he sounded. Jesse then asked Ash and the gang if they wanted to take a ride, and everyone was still hesitant, obviously, but they looked down to see that Psyduck had already gotten on a sled, wanting to go. Ash and the gang then looked at Fampy and saw that it wanted to go with Psyduck too, so Ash let Fampy ride on the sled with Psyduck, and Max also suggested that the four of them might as well go as well, and Ash agreed, along with Brock and May eventually, with May riding down in a sled, Ash and Pikachu riding down in a sled, Brock and Max riding down in a sled, and Fampy and Psyduck riding down in a sled. They were all a bit scared at first, but they reminded themselves that if a fucking Psyduck could do this, they could do it too, and they all ended up having an absolute blast. And eventually, Ash and Pikachu managed to take the lead in the sled race they were having, and Max almost fell off his sled, but Brock held onto him. Pikachu almost fell off too, but Ash held onto him. James, seeing that he no longer needed to do a demonstration, was very glad as he very tiredly returned to the top of the hill where Jessie was, and asked her what she planned to do now, since Jessie was the one who came up with most of the plan. Jessie revealed what she was going to do as she pulled out a remote and pressed a button on it that caused several giant pillars to rise out of the ground, almost like fucking pinball. And also like pinball, Ash and the gang proceeded to run into all these pillars on their sleds and bounce off of them like they were pinballs. And each of these pinball-like pillars had different point values on them, though it wasn't like they were actually playing a pinball game, so the points didn't matter. As for how Ash and the gang were taking the bouncing, they were screaming in fear as the pillars made noises, and they didn't understand why, because they didn't understand the whole pinball gimmick yet. And Psyduck and Fampy ended up managing to slide right by all of the pillars, not hitting a single one, wondering why everyone was screaming. Just then, Jessie pressed another button on her remote that caused a soccer net to spring up from the ground as well, and Ash and the gang slid right into it after bumping into the right amount of pillars. As a result of bumping into all the pillars and falling into the net, Ash and the gang obviously fall off their sleds as well. Just then, Meowth popped out from a hole in the ground right by the net, and it was a bit disappointed at first that Psyduck and Fampy had avoided the net, but seeing that Fampy and Psyduck were simply just continuing down the hill, Meowth quickly managed to throw a huge butterfly net and caught Psyduck and Fampy anyways. Meowth then brags about how he had captured Psyduck and Fampy to Ash and the gang, while Ash and the gang moaned with pain and complained that their fun sledding was over. There was no point in Team Rocket hiding their identities now, since Ash and the gang knew that it was Team Rocket, since Meowth revealed himself, so Team Rocket did a cool motto where they slid down the hill while on their sleds, snowboarding with them, and they threw off their disguises, and Chimecho joined in on the motto too. Once Jessie and James were off of their sleds and had met up with Meowth, and were about to take Psyduck and Fampy away, Ash yelled at them, demanding to give Fampy and Psyduck back, but Team Rocket just refused, as they took Fampy and Psyduck into their Meowth balloon, jumping in as well, and they started to fly away in it, as Meowth tightened the net to make sure that Fampy and Psyduck couldn't escape. Although, Ash and the gang didn't stop demanding the return of Psyduck and Fampy, as they managed to get up, despite the pain they were feeling, and chased after the Meowth balloon. Unfortunately, the Meowth balloon was too fast for Ash and the gang, and it was about to get away, but just then, Machoke and Machamp, though not Machop for some reason, came running from the distance and managed to grab a hold of the Meowth balloon with their strong hands after managing to catch up with it after going extremely fast, and they quickly started pulling the Meowth balloon down, preventing it from floating forward. Ash and May and Max wondered why the Machoke and Machamp were helping after everything that had happened earlier when they heard the Psyduck and all that, and they battled against Fampy, but Brock said that it didn't really matter what their intentions were. So long as they were against Team Rocket, Ash and the gang should just be happy with that. Machoke and Machamp then tossed the Meowth balloon to the ground, and this throws Team Rocket out of the Meowth balloon, although they don't give up. They just got angry at the Machoke and Machamp for ruining their plans, and called out Viper and Cacnea respectively to battle them, although Cacnea, of course, hugged James first, prickling him. With Team Rocket distracted by Cacnea's hugging, Machop suddenly revealed itself, having hidden a bush nearby as it sneaks behind the Meowth balloon to rescue Fampy and Psyduck. It was then that Ash and the gang arrived at the scene, seeing this, and surprised that the Machop, Machamp, and Machoke were so intent on rescuing Psyduck, and impressed by the strategy that Machop, Machoke, and Machamp had come up with, especially the strategy to hide Machop to catch Team Rocket off guard. Unfortunately, Team Rocket was able to get over their distraction with Cacnea, and noticed Machop taking Fampy and Psyduck away in the net. But before Team Rocket could do anything to Machop, Machoke and Machamp protected Machop by running towards Team Rocket at a fast speed, and both of them used a cross chop to send Team Rocket flying into their Meowth balloon. And after this, the force from them being knocked into the Meowth balloon caused the Meowth balloon's burner to explode, sending Team Rocket blasting off. With Team Rocket gone, Machop then freed Psyduck and Fampy from the net. Fampy appeared to still be suspicious of the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, so it jumped in front of Psyduck to protect it from them. As, sure enough, the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp crowded around Psyduck and Fampy, wanting to hurt Psyduck again, at least it seemed, so Ash and the gang demanded that Machop, Machoke, and Machamp stop bullying Psyduck, wondering what the fuck their goal was with this. Why did they save Psyduck just to bully Psyduck again? Suddenly, the Rapidash carriage with the girl in it from earlier arrived, and the girl stepped out, the fan from earlier still covering her face as she moved it. Upon seeing the girl, Psyduck turns its head in disgust, but the girl was very happy, running to Psyduck, declaring that it was very nice to have her sweet little Psyduck back, leading May to come to the conclusion that this girl must have been Psyduck's trainer, and that was true, because if you remember, the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp were sent by this girl to go retrieve Psyduck, and they were likely just battling it, or trying to bully it, to basically force it to come along. Ash and the gang went up to the girl and introduced themselves, wondering if she was actually Psyduck's trainer, and the woman confirms this, introducing herself as Emily, still hugging her Psyduck. Ash and the gang expressed their curiosity at learning more about Psyduck and Emily, so Emily decides to invite Ash and the gang into her carriage as her Rapidash continued to pull it along the path to some destination. Emily then explains that she had sent Psyduck on an errand, but it had never returned. And she added that she had tried to send Psyduck on 3 errands, but every time it managed to go away from Emily, Psyduck took the chance to never come back. Ash and the gang then questioned why Emily felt the need to send 3 of her other Pokemon after it, realizing that the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp were hers, and Emily explained that Psyduck needed some Pokemon to set it straight, since it would try and escape again if the Pokemon didn't battle it, and said that Psyduck wasn't a battler, so it could get in trouble on its own. So she also wanted to have the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp potentially help it if it got in danger while it got lost. And that's exactly what they did when they saw that Psyduck was in trouble with Team Rocket. And Emily then adds that the Machop, Machoke, and Machamp had brought Psyduck back to her the other 2 times it ran away. Ash then questioned why she thought the Psyduck wasn't coming back and was going away, although Emily admitted that she had no fucking clue. Soon enough, Rapidash pulls the carriage to its destination, Emily's mansion, and Ash and gang were amazed by the exterior, but were only even more amazed by the interior, because, Emily was rich and all that, so she could afford a really nice house. Immediately upon entering the lobby, Emily noticed that Psyduck seemed to be a little dirty from all the chasing and battling it had experienced earlier today, so she declared that it needed a bath immediately, promising Psyduck that she would make sure it was bathed perfectly. So Emily led Ash and the gang and Psyduck down a hallway where they encountered 3 of Emily's maids who carried Psyduck while it screamed and tried to get out of their hands. But Emily didn't object, regardless, because the maids were taking Psyduck to get a bath that it desperately needed. Ash and the gang thought that Emily was being a bit cruel, just letting her maids deal with Psyduck, who was supposed to be her Pokemon. So Emily decided to prove that she cared about Psyduck more than anything, as she helped bathe it and put a spray of perfume on it, which Psyduck absolutely hated, by the way, and then fed it a large dinner of assorted vegetables and meat, provided by the many chefs that she had at her disposal, with the chefs claiming that this food was the best food they had ever made. Hearing this, Emily invites Ash and the gang, Phanpy, and Pikachu to all sit down and eat with her and Psyduck, having a massive banquet, which Ash and the gang thought was delicious. Psyduck didn't think the food was delicious, though, as it refused to eat it, and Emily noticed that it looked sad and depressed, and wondered why this was, and also wondering why Psyduck, according to her, hadn't eaten basically anything lately. Although Max State replied, along with Brock, Ash, and May, that Psyduck was happy eating the Pokemon food that Brock made earlier. Upon hearing this, Emily reacted in shock that her Psyduck would eat such common food, as opposed to top-tier food made by her chefs. And Max also adds that Psyduck didn't seem to be depressed all the time either, since it was happy playing with Pikachu and Phanpy. Emily was extremely confused as to why Psyduck was depressed around her, but happy doing other things away from her, and Max and Ash were confused about this as well. Although May and Brock started to realize what was actually going on, which was that, much like Madame Much Money Snubble back in Johto, Psyduck didn't seem to like the high-class, rich life with all this luxurious food, luxurious bathing, all that shit. It just wanted friends to play with, and basic stuff. May wasn't absolutely positive, though, so she didn't feel like saying anything, and Brock didn't feel like saying anything either. He needed more evidence first. Emily requested that Ash and the gang stay behind to help her figure out what was wrong with her Psyduck, and Brock and Max accepted, although May and Ash got a little bored with this, and decided to have a little practice battle outside of the mansion in the backyard, with Ash using Phanpy and May using Squirtle. Squirtle started off the battle by using a water gun, and Phanpy countered by using a rollout, and the 2 attacks collided, as Psyduck, from inside the mansion, watched the battle from a window with a depressed look, indicating that it wanted to battle as well. Since, although it looked depressed to not be battling, when it saw the attacks hit each other, Psyduck smirked. Brock and Max observed Psyduck observing, and Max saw that Psyduck really wanted to battle, and explained to Emily that she should allow Psyduck to be in Pokemon battles, coming to the conclusion that Emily must not have, if it craved battling that much. Emily, however, was horrified by the concept of Psyduck battling, saying she would never subject Psyduck to any rough torture like that. Brock then butt in, saying that Pokemon battling was not the same as normal fighting, where Pokemon fought without the connection of trainers, or under the instruction of trainers, saying that if Pokemon fought under the orders of trainers, Pokemon battling was actually a great way for a trainer to communicate with her Pokemon, and Brock thought that it would be a very good thing for Emily and her Psyduck to learn to communicate, so that she could more easily understand why Psyduck was feeling unhappy. Emily retorted by saying that she and her Psyduck did have great communication already, and there was nothing that should have been bothering Psyduck, since she gave it every luxury it could ever want. But Brock pointed out that if Emily and Psyduck really did have good connection, then Emily should have realized that Psyduck didn't really care about any of these luxuries, and still seemed a bit empty and lonely, even with these luxuries that it didn't care about. And added that the only way that Psyduck was going to be truly happy and not empty inside would be if it was allowed to battle, showing Emily that Psyduck was currently watching the battle between Squirtle and Phanpy outside, and that meant that it wanted to battle too. Emily was shocked that her Psyduck would want to battle, but as she watched Psyduck watch the battle, she started to understand a little bit. Speaking of the battle, it was continuing as Squirtle continued to use Water Gun, and Phanpy continued to use Rollout, this time using Rollout to roll out of the way of the Water Gun's path, and then sped towards Squirtle extremely fast. Emily, who was watching this, fully realized that Psyduck was interested in battling when, suddenly, Psyduck jumped out of the mansion window somehow to get involved in the battle, landing on Phanpy, who was still rolling, leading Psyduck to balance itself on Phanpy as it continued to roll around. This made Psyduck happy, as one of the reasons why it entered the battle was because it wanted to assist its new friend Phanpy against the Squirtle. So he figured that himself bouncing on Phanpy could help it control its rollout and hit Squirtle better without being hit by Squirtle's water gun. However, even though Psyduck wanted to help, he actually ended up doing damage to Phanpy because Phanpy ended up panicking and Psyduck landed on it, and Phanpy and Psyduck ended up rolling right into Ash and knocking him into a nearby fountain. Psyduck and Phanpy ended up landing in the pool as well, and while Phanpy quickly got out, not liking the water, Psyduck found the whole situation hilarious, and only found it more hilarious as he started to splash Ash with water, and Ash splashed him back. Mace Squirtle then joins in by using water gun on both Psyduck and Ash's faces. Pikachu decides to get in with the fun as well, jumping in the water, creating a huge wave as Brock, Max, and Emily come out of the mansion, and Brock shows Emily how much fun Ash, Psyduck, Squirtle, and Pikachu were having. And Brock also explains that Ash was an expert at making Pokemon happy because he knew how to communicate with them, because he battled with them and did things with them, aside from just pampering them with gifts. Emily indeed saw that Psyduck was happy and realized that maybe Brock was right. She should focus more on letting Psyduck battle and improving her communication and bond with it, as opposed to giving it gifts. Just then, Ash and Gang and Emily were startled as smoke filled the area, and everyone looked up to see where it was coming from, only to see that it was coming from none other than Team Rocket's new Chimecho balloon, as Viper and Cacnea were already inside it, and Viper had just used haze to create the smoke. And Meowth then presses a button in the Meowth balloon to activate a claw to grab a hold of Psyduck and pull it up to them, determined to capture it once again. Ash and Emily were both desperate to save Psyduck, so Ash called out his Grovyle and had to use Leaf Blade to cut the hand that had just brought Psyduck up, and since the hand was broken, this did free Psyduck, but also caused it to fall to the ground. So Emily quickly ran over and saved it from falling to its death by catching it, Emily having had to jump to do so. Ash then has Grovyle use a bullet seed to poke many holes in Team Rocket's Meowth balloon, sending it crashing down into the mansion's backyard, causing a whole bunch of smoke to emerge as a result. But the smoke then clears as Team Rocket emerges from the remains of the Meowth balloon with Viper and Cacnea, and declare that they were not going to give up on catching Psyduck without a fight. Ash, knowing that Viper and Cacnea were likely going to attack any second, prepared to have Grovyle attack them first, but before Grovyle could attack, Phanpy jumped in the way, wanting to battle Team Rocket as revenge for them trying to steal its friend Psyduck, as it used a rollout on Viper, knocking it back and preventing it from attacking. Meanwhile, Emily, after just having caught Psyduck, noticed that she had gotten a little dirty, as did Psyduck, but she didn't really care, and just asked if it was okay, as she and Psyduck now sat on the ground, trying to stay out of the battle with Team Rocket. Psyduck was shocked that Emily asked if it was okay, as opposed to scolding it for being dirty, and responded by smiling and laughing, assuring Emily that it was okay, which made Emily happy as well. Emily simply laughed at how dirty the two of them were, just happy that Psyduck was happy, amazed that Psyduck battling and her not giving a fuck about it being dirty was all it took for it to finally be happy. Just then, Cacnea must have wanted to please James because it challenged Psyduck to a battle, mocking it to get it fired up by making fun of its stupid nature. In response to Cacnea's battle challenge, Psyduck simply stepped forward, determined to battle. Max informed Emily of this, although even though Emily wanted Psyduck to be happy, she was still too scared to actually order Psyduck around to battle, because she didn't want to be responsible for anything bad to happen to it. But Max told Emily that if Psyduck wanted to battle, then she should support it. Just then, Cacnea started off the battle between it and Psyduck by whipping up a sandstorm that blew Psyduck back a little bit. Psyduck was still determined to battle though, but Emily was nervous. Max told Emily that she would have to battle with Psyduck whether she liked it or not, and told her to order any attack that she knew, asking if she even knew any of Psyduck's attacks, and Emily did, as she listed a few of them, including a focus punch, leading Max to suggest that Emily order this attack because it was powerful, and after a bit of hesitation, Emily eventually obliges, ordering Psyduck to use a focus punch, which sends Cacnea flying through the air. The Viper then emerges from the Meowth balloon, ready to battle once again. So, and Emily asked Max what she should do next, and Max suggested that Emily use a Fury Swipe attack, and Emily obliged, with Psyduck using a Fury Swipes at Viper to keep Viper back a little bit, preventing it from attacking, impressing Ash and the gang with how fast Emily and Psyduck were getting used to battling. Meowth got a little fed up with Cacnea and Viper both failing, so seeing that Psyduck could use Fury Swipes, Meowth decided to battle Psyduck using a Fury Swipes of his own, and both Pokemon got into a Fury Swipes confrontation, with them forming a rivalry, essentially trying to prove whose Fury Swipes was stronger, and they continued to trade hits for a long time. While Emily asked Max what she should do now, and Max suggested a water gun, but quickly stopped himself, admitting that that's just what he would do, and suggested that it was totally fine with Emily to come up with a move on her own. That would only strengthen her and Psyduck's communication. So Emily obliged and told Psyduck to use an even more powerful water attack, Hydro Pump, directly at Meowth, knocking it into Jessie and James, and down for the count for a little bit. Jessie decided to get Viper back into the fray, telling it to use a Poison Tail, although Emily simply just told Psyduck to dodge. Viper continued to use more Poison Tails, but Emily was amazed that Psyduck was battling super well, as Psyduck continued to dodge every single one of the Poison Tails. Then, Emily decided to have Psyduck use a Confusion to actually attack Team Rocket and Viper, as the Confusion lifts up Viper and sends it flying into Jessie, James, and Meowth, who in turn go flying with Viper and Cacnea into the remains of the Meowth balloon, and then Pikachu uses Thunderbolt to send Team Rocket blasting off, along with Wobbuffet, who forcibly popped out of its Pokeball. With Team Rocket defeated, Psyduck jumps for joy, and Emily hugs it, admitting that it battled amazingly well. Emily then admits to Ash and the gang that she was scared to battle, and she was scared to have her Psyduck battle, but now she understood what Brock meant. Psyduck had wanted to battle all along, and she stated that she looked forward to regaining her bond with her Psyduck, now that it could battle in happiness and not be sad anymore. Suddenly, Psyduck's stomach suddenly grumbled, so Emily knew that Psyduck was ready for a full-course meal, and stated that it deserved it, so she quickly had her chefs whip up a grand meal, and let Ash and the gang eat it with Psyduck and her. Once the meal was done, Ash and the gang prepared to leave to continue on their journey, standing outside the mansion gates with Emily, Psyduck, Machop, Machoke, and Machamp. Emily then thanks Ash and the gang for helping her realize what was up with her Psyduck, and Ash and the gang state that they didn't do that much. It was mostly because of Emily and her bond with Psyduck that she was able to fully realize it, and Brock suggested that if she wanted to keep Psyduck happy so their bond could grow even more, she should learn to battle even more with Psyduck, and Emily agreed to, and also promised not to pamper Psyduck too much, since she now knew that Psyduck didn't like that either, and that just made Psyduck even more happy, knowing that it would be treated like normal. Emily then asked Psyduck if it wanted to participate in more battles and strengthen itself, and Psyduck happily jumped up and down, revealing that it did. So, with that, Emily revealed that because of Psyduck's want to continue battling, she was actually going to go on a journey of her own with Psyduck, so that they could battle trainers all over. And Emily then wished Ash and the gang luck with whatever their future goals were, and promised to try her best to be a good trainer and friend to her Pokemon. Ash and the gang, in turn, wished Emily luck with her journey, assuring her that she would do fine, so long as her and Psyduck maintained a good bond, and with that, the episode then ended with Ash and the gang saying goodbye to Emily, Psyduck, Machop, Machoke, and Machamp, heading off to their next destination, Saffron City.